What's up, chat? Welcome back to the stream. It is Tuesday. We are getting a little tactical today. I know it's a big week so far for Warhammer 40k. Obviously, WTC going down this week is a big deal. Warmaster is currently playing. I think maybe was playing. I think that they probably wrapped up day one recently. So pretty cool stuff from that. We've got a lot of Warhammer 40k coming over the next week, of course. And I want to talk a little bit about some teams as well, because we talked quite a bit over the week about the International Team Tournament, ITT. And I do want to talk about the winning army from that, or the winning team from that one, because it had a very interesting composition. I'm fascinated about it. It also, of course, was in the news quite a bit for some other reasons. If you watch my second channel, I have a video about that. We did a little live stream last night. We talked to some of the team captains. We looked through some of the comment threads about how a guy punched another guy a bunch of times, allegedly, according to eyewitnesses, I guess, at that event. Fucking wild story. Insane. Anyway... yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do, and it's gonna be a good time. As a GSC main, like to say, no idea you couldn't run a Logos on your own. Yeah, we have found things out. Although theoretically, it should tell you when you build your list if you use the 40k app. So, just gotta pay attention to the little warnings, I guess, for sure. Yeah, that story was wild, absolutely insane, and I'm glad that. I don't know I don't think UKTC has sort of said anything publicly about it. As far as I know, that might be the case. We'll see what they elect to do. It would be so difficult not to imagine that dude just gets a permanent ban, right? But it is UKTC. Like, UKTC does take literally people just cheating and gives them like slaps on the wrist. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's talk about some events. So the first thing I want to talk about is an event that I don't know what happened here, chat. So I was looking through the results today. Oh, look at this little Wednesday guy out of here. It's not Wednesday. Get out of here. Was he on yesterday? It's embarrassing. I don't know what happened here, but I was going through my Best Coast pairings, and I noticed a new event that was on here that was not there when I did my stats on Sunday. So I don't know if it was privated or potentially the standings were hidden. But I went through it, I looked, and I was like, oh shit, here's a GT that I didn't cover. The RCM Summer Skirmish. It's a 5-round event. I guess it's a league, actually. Which is probably why it wasn't visible until later. Yeah, because they started it in late June and then ended it just now. That's actually interesting. Okay, so I guess that explains that reason. I didn't realize that it was a joint in-person plus online event. That's actually really cool. I maybe should have read the description before I started the live stream, but we're doing it live. Pretty sweet. I did also want to give a shout out to Kidsmith Hannah, who of course is an incredibly strong player, playing the old classic Legion of Excess plus Warp Tide. I know that some people have asked me about advice about this particular list composition. It is certainly beatable, but it is incredibly strong. Essentially, the name of the game is that you're going to impose a ton of combat tricks on your opponent. Things like past wounds, things like -1 to hit, -1 to wound, fight on death. All of these things that allow you to act, or that allow you to basically absorb melee attacks. You just want to be able to take melee attacks forever. And the reason that that's relevant is that you then, if you charge and you give up your fight first, meaning that your opponent is going to fight or has the opportunity in some cases to fight you first, then you can absorb those attacks. You don't take too much damage, and when you hit back, you get rerolls to hit and rerolls to wound. So your whole army, the damage output of your army basically increases by about 50% or so, based on what you're attacking, obviously, what the exact situation is. That includes effects such as the Torment Bringer, I think it's a fight or death effect, but I think it's only on her unit, so I don't know if that matters. The Mask of Slanesh gives you -1 to wound, which is huge, and your Slanesh units get +1 to wound. And then you have a Contorted Epitome, which gives a 4+ field up and it gets mortal wounds, and you can use Thief of Pain to transfer wounds into mortal wounds on this unit to then allow them to block it. So you can, for example, take a fiend unit, get the fiend unit charged by something or charge into something, and then give up fight first. Your opponent fights into the fiend unit, you go Thief of Pain. All the damage of the fiend unit transfers to mortal wounds of the demonettes. The fiends get to invulnerable save it. It's not just raw damage or anything. So you roll an invulnerable save, you fail the invulnerable save, then it goes to damage. The damage transfers to mortal wounds. You go to the demonettes, and the mortal wounds get filled up pained by the Contorted Epitome. So the raw damage that you do pre-save gets cut down by about I don't know, somewhere between like 50 and 70% based on the invulnerable save of the target unit. So it's kind of crazy. We should have a fist fight section of team tournaments. The problem is that it would be like really highly trafficked though. It would be really popular. That's the issue with team tournaments. No, I think I don't know. It's just like an insane situation. I think the team format certainly exacerbates like that kind of thing. I think it's much easier to get like into, to get into a mindset where you feel like you have to fight somebody in a team format. However, you also need to not be belligerently drunk, and you also need to not literally assault people. Like, it's crazy. As much as we can talk about other things being like, factors there, of course, at the end of the day, the dude who got actually blackout drunk and beat up on a guy is like so far at fault. It's insane. Yeah. I don't know. Wild. So yeah, anyway, we're rocking a pair of Keepers of Secrets. We're rocking a Torment Bringer with False Majesty. That's +1 to wound aura. Mask of Slanesh for the -1 to wound. 2 Demonets with Bane Forged weapons. I think it's from Warptide. The Demonets also get Advance in Charge, which is great because they're very fast. That is +1 strength on those. So does that put them to strength 4? Demonettes and Chaos Demons are base strength 4, so they go to strength 5. Oh, that's actually kind of spooky. They go to strength 5, and they have multiple access to several instances of +1 to wound. So they can go to strength, like, basically winning on 2s in a lot of cases. That actually makes Demonettes really spooky into a lot of other, like, utility. Interesting, chat. I did not really put that together. That's pretty good. And then we have a bunch of Fiends. And the Fiends are really spooky as well. Just because, like, any sort of reroll on them goes really, really hard. They have, like, a Battle Shock effect, which is sort of whatever. However, the big thing is that they're bringing 5 Devastating Wound melee attacks. So once you start stacking, like, sustained hits from the Torment Bringer on top of this, like, high-volume attack profile, you get rerolls from the detached ability and then reroll once the wound, so you can trigger more Devastating Wounds. And the Fiends are kind of the MVPs of the whole list. You're also like applying things like -1 to wound from the mask onto a base T5 unit. So if you come in with strength 4 or strength 5 melee, you're disproportionately affected by that you're going to do very little damage to them, and they're just going to kill you on your turn. So it's a spooky unit. It's a very spooky unit, those Fiends of Slanesh. And the number of games I've seen that have basically turned on their head because Fiends either refuse to die or hit really hard and effectively overperform is quite a few, for sure. War Master still in progress. Sick. Yeah, I made a channel. Obviously, I haven't done anything with it today, but I figure that I'll probably hang in. I made a couple channels in the Discord to watch WTC. I'll probably hang in those over the course of the week as I'm doing editing and stuff, so that we could just like watch along on WTC games. I think that'd be fun. So anyway, congratulations to Kitsmith Hannah for winning RCM Summer Skirmish. I guess it's like a non-standard format of an event, which is why I didn't grok it initially. And I think it ended, in the last couple days, but pretty cool. I just wanted to talk about that because I noticed it. In any case, let's talk about some freaking summer ITT. So the winning list for International Team Tournament was Team Sigil. And the most interesting thing, I think, is that I saw a lot of non-standard faction selections. So we look on the other side of the table. Carnage Behemoth is the team they played. It's who they smoked in the final game, right? You're playing out of, essentially, you start with 50 points per team out of the differential. It's a 50-50 if the two teams draw. They won 80-18. They only allowed the other team to score 18 total points over the course of the game, of all the games. It's insane. Or 18 total differential points, which means they basically only scored within, what is that, 90 points out of 5 games of their other players. 90 points total out of 5 games. The Team Sigil beat them by an average of like 18 points per game. Or yeah, crazy. Anyway, chat. Pretty big blowout. But this is a composition I would expect to see pretty commonly, right? We've got Emperor's Children, one of the top performing factions of the edition. Thousand Suns, again, another top performing faction of the edition. I imagine this is like a Carnival of Excess kind of build. Yeah, Frenzied Host was Carnival of Excess. It's sort of the classic build. We saw some players doing very well with it over the last couple of weeks. Thousand Suns is probably a Grand Coven. It is a Grand Coven. With Magnus the Red, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff. These are like normal ass list. Orcs is some sort of boys skew, Equatorial Hordes, Freebooter Crew. I have a video out about that particular list and how good it is. Necron's a bit of Sky Shroud. It is. Look at that. Tau Empire, probably Retaliation Contra. Or is it a Kalyan? It is a Kalyan. Fair enough. At least Tau has a little bit of build diversity. But these are like, if you were to select 5 of the top performing armies in the edition right now, that would be it. They were smoked by an army playing Deathwatch, Adeptus Mechanicus, and Death Guard. What? Insane. So that's fun and cool. I love it when teams just play things that they are really good at, regardless of whether they are metagame, current meta, or whatever. But they're just like, listen, everyone else is like contorting themselves to play the best stuff in the game. We're just going to play the stuff that we are just physically best at. And then the pairing process doesn't matter so much because we assume we're going to beat our opponents, which in general, I think is how you should approach a lot of these competitions. If you are not like cutting edge, like a professional player who does this, a significant proportion of your time, and you are prepared to slot into new factions at the upper echelon of competitive play whatever's, good for you. Downside of team events is that sometimes you do have to find a build that works, whether it's a disposition or a faction restriction. However, in most cases, especially if you're playing non-standard stuff, it'll be easier to find the other folks, or the other lists to play with the other factions. So pretty cool. I love it. So let's hop in. I don't know what their orcs look like. It is Freebooter Crew and more DACA. So he's running Gasco Thraka and a Bionic Workshop Painboy. Is that I actually don't know what that is. That's an enhancement. Oh, I think this is in Freebooter Crew. Okay. At the start of the game, roll a D3, compare the result. Compare the results of the list below. It's the end of the battle. Models in the Bears unit have that Bionic ability. Either Bionic Legs for +2 movement, Bionic Arms for +1 strength, or Bionic Bonts. The Bonts like your head? It must be, right? Improve the weapon skill characteristic of melee weapons equipped by this model by 1. The weapon skill one's a little bit awkward because you have Gaskell in the unit. So you could get +1 weapon skill, but also be hitting on 2s anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I guess you have a way around -1 to hit, I suppose. Because Gaskell gives you +1 to hit and wounds. Bionic Arms is +1 strength, which is almost always great. You can go to strength 5 or strength 6. Those are both good break points. Bionic Legs is fucking awesome. So there's like a 33% chance that you just get Here We Go or Let's Go Lads or whatever the enhancement is for in Warhorde. Or you can also get +1 strength. If you get the weapon scale, it's not the end of the world, but it's not the best thing ever. That's actually sick. I think I do remember talking about this and how cool it was when Freebooter Crew came out, but I have not ever seen anyone take it, so that's cool. We have Zodguard Warsnaga in a Gretchen unit, classic. We have a Big Mecha Shock attack in a Luda unit, classic. We have that again. Dead Shiny Shunas in both of those, so they're going to get rapid fire. Mozrog Scrag Bad inside a Squeakhog Boy Squad. Wazdaka Gutsmack triple Big Mech DACA rigs to combo with more DACA. Big thing there is that we get like access to sustained hits for assault of these guys is pretty good, although oftentimes they want to be getting heavy. However, they get access to sustained hits on their rocket launcher, which is pretty good because they have it on their blitz cannon naturally, but the rocket launcher getting it's a big deal. We then have a Gretchen squad and another Luda squad with dead shiny shooters. So we're just firing like a bunch of these re-rolling sustained hit gunshots. We have a bunch of these kind of annoying to kill vehicles. 115 points in there. Were they like 11 wounds with a 5+ invuln? They're weirdly difficult to kill. Yeah, 11 wounds at TA with a 5+ invuln is like sort of an annoying profile. You're 1 wound over a Landspeeder Vengeance. At 30 points cheaper. Obviously, you do not have the same damage output. You're not even close to as good. However, it is annoying to kill, and it shoots a billion times, which is neat. I think this rules, chat. I like that we can play orcs not necessarily sort of baked into this horde melee mode that most of these armies have been playing recently, and we can play a little bit more of a gun line, which is cool. Bionic Bots is a classic war gear from back in the day. That's like a 2nd edition thing. I do like it when they slip in nods to that kind of stuff. Chris Cho also ran a Black Spear Task Force. So often in 8-player teams, you'll basically see that every team has what is essentially a Space Marine slot. Because Space Marines are such a dramatic proportion of the game in its totality, right? It's, we have like 27 factions or whatever, but also Space Marines are like consist of 4 of those and also have like 4 additional sub factions. So out of like, I think you can talk about 40k as having like 30-ish factions, and Space Marines are like almost a third of them. So because they represent such a dramatic proportion of the game, there's always something that's good that you can take with them that doesn't compete with the other factions in your team. So in team composition, Space Marines are very strong because you can almost always like find whatever the best thing is to play out of the Space Marine super faction, and it's going to be a very competitive list. And they're so flexible that they can fill multiple roles because you can, if we need something that's aggressive and that can force people out of, sort of static gunline play, you can play something like Blood Angels. If you need something that's more defensive, you can play something like Deathwing. If you need something that does have that like Alpha Strike potential, you can play something like Dark Angels. So, there's like it's interesting build variety. It's a little bit less popular inside of 5-player team events because you don't need to fill as many slots and you don't need to fill as many roles. However, typically when you do see them played, you see something that's very consistent. 5-player team events tend to reward consistency, which is why you see teams that are like very good at specific list builds doing well, which I think is the case here. So that's why it's really interesting that we have decided to take Deathwatch here, which is not a particularly high-performing sub faction. We did talk about them going 5-0 at Utah or at Iowag, but that was because they did have to reverse the results of the Gene Stealer Call player. Fair enough. But it is interesting to see them in like to this level in a 5-player team format. I always like seeing some Black Spear Task Force. I also like that we have named all of our we've named all of our Deathwatch teams. That's this list is kind of melee pilled though. The last list we looked at was playing Decimus kill teams in place of Deathwatch veteran teams. But in this case, we are all in on the Deathwatch veteran teams. So the benefits of these guys, obviously, is they do get hit rerolls baked in, so they're not quite as reliant on Oath of Moment as a lot of Deathwatch is. Like, Deathwatch in many cases are looking explicitly to get like a big Tome of the Ectoclades turnout because they need things like Indomitor kill teams or Challenge Strikes to inflict a crippling damage on the way in. The Deathwatch veteran teams, because they have baked in reroll ones and sometimes they get full hit rerolls, can kind of just like operate independently. They also don't really need mission tactics at all. They also don't tend to need site-to-site teleportation because they're largely melee focused. So they don't take a lot of resources from the rest of the army, which is very helpful. But then the other thing, of course, is that they just have this insane melee profile, right? Deathwatch Thunderhammer is for whatever reason, like the only 3 damage Thunderhammer left of the game. It comes in with strength 10 AP2, 3 damage devastating wounds, and then when you're rerolling that hits, that 4+ weapon skill doesn't look quite as bad. So we've got 4 Deathwatch Thunderhammers and a bunch of power swords and stuff. 3 shield guys, Xenophase Waves and Watch Sergeants. Yeah, power weapons on the other dudes. That's with a Beacon Angelus Watchmaster. We then have a Thief of Secrets Watchmaster, so he hits really hard on the second one. And then we have a Gravis Captive Tome of the Exoclades that's inside an Indomitor kill team. So we unlock free uppy downy on those guys. And then, of course, the Watchmasters of these units give them advanced shoot and charge. So the other thing, sometimes you see them in builds. I guess this one isn't doing it, but sometimes you do see the heavy weapons being taken alongside the Thunderhammers, and that lets these guys pull double duty, where they can, like, disembark a Rhino or something, run in, clear a screening unit, and then charge the unit that was behind them. We're not doing that in this case. We're taking all melee all the time, but fair enough. The Indomitor kill team is running Flamestorm Gauntlet Aggressors in addition to their Melta rifles and stuff. We do have 1 Rhino to carry around the Deathwatch veteran teams. We're taking 1 Deathwatch Terminator squad. These guys, I talked about them when we discussed the list yesterday, but the Deathwatch Terminators are often there as they're sort of as this like utility unit or this disruptor piece effectively, where you need something that can test your opponent on objectives. Basically, the entire Deathwatch army starts the game by not deploying anything. They deploy in a little ball in the back of their deployment zone, or in reserve, or in rhinos, so that you don't really have any targets. And what the Deathwatch, like the downside, of course, is that the other player can just screen out and do nothing, right? And the Deathwatch player has to play around that. The Terminator squad gives them this something that they can commit and force their opponent to actually deal with. Because what you need to do is you need to begin the trading war so that you can like doom drop your opponent and kill all their valuable stuff, and then they slowly lose just by the fact that you are like outnumbering them with Space Marine bodies in the middle of the table. So the Deathwatch Terminators are great at that. They basically like site to site, or they teleport Homer in, they drop down, they shoot a utility unit to death, they charge something, they take an objective, and then your opponent has to turn around and fight them, which means they have to basically like break out of their any protected positions they might be in, which then allows your Indomitor kill teams to come fight them. I talk about the Deathwatch game plan a lot because it's very consistent. It might be the single army in 40K with the most consistent like game to game plan of anything in the game. You set up your units, you set up your units like defensively, you push your Terminators forward, your opponent comes to shoot the Terminators, you drop Indomitor kill teams into them. As they come back to attack the Indomitor kill teams, you rapid ingress the Beacon Angelus guy, and then you heroically intervene and you kill the things that are about to kill the Indomitor kill teams, and then your opponent's usually so far down in attrition that you win by then. It's every single time. I've watched dozens and dozens and dozens of Deathwatch games, and every single one of them is the same. It's very funny. But I mean, if you're good at seeing the matrix and especially being able to utilize these combined arms units that have multiple different weapon profiles, it's going to be great for you. Very cool to see Deathwatch in that slot in place of something like that's a little bit more, I guess, sort of meta right now. Something like a Librarius Task Force Salamanders, I would expect to be there. Something like a what's the word? Saga of, or Legends of Saga and Song list from Space Wolves. I do wonder, it is a Purge the Foe army, so I guess it's not like Purge the Foe is we're hurting for Purge the Foe options, but that might have been a consideration. Orcs might be more predetermined. I don't think that's the case. Some orc builds are. I think like in end of 10th we talked about Cult of Speed orcs quite a bit, and Cult of Speed orcs are like the same every game. They didn't have the real estate on the board to play differently. They were just like, I'll deploy on the line and I'm gonna wag the first chance I get, and I'm gonna move my whole army towards you. But we have seen orcs more recently play a little bit more flexibly. Like obviously they do want to stage up and then they want to walk and then they want to charge you. That's like the play pattern that most greatly rewards them. But based on what the other army can do, they do have to reposition themselves quite a bit. We even saw them kind of run away in the finals of Lone Star Open because Tyranids out threat ranged them on average, right? It was 2 advanced and charge armies playing the threat ranges with each other, but one of them was base move 8. So it was just like, I'm faster than you, what are you going to do about it? And the orc army actually had to kind of like pull back in a lot of cases and not just take table space and not just push into the opponent's side. And they had to space themselves. They had to play screening. So I think orcs, and especially given the fact that, obviously orcs is a whole faction rather than a sub faction, orcs do have a lot of different build variety as well that will play differently. Let's talk about some Adeptus Mechanicals, chat. I'm interested in talking about some Adeptus Mechanicals. Sam Martin over here running Rad Zone Core plus Lords of the Forge. Pull up the Rad Zone Core rules real quick. This is the detachment where you irradiate your opponent at the start of the game. So your opponent can either take cover from your radioactive fallout, in which case they get battle shocks, or they just eat. There's a strong chance they eat damage. They still might take damage even if they hide, but there's a strong chance to take damage. So immediately, you've already done a bunch of damage to your opponent's army. In addition to that, they will consistently take damage as the game goes on. Now, there's a couple things that this does. First of all, I do think that hiding in your deployment zone, because this checks things within deployment zone, right? It's not wholly within. It doesn't require that you put everybody back in your DZ. I do think that hiding things in the deployment zone is pretty common in 11th edition. Part of that is the hidden mechanic, where you can now sort of stage things farther back. The other thing, too, is that Adeptus Mechanicus does tend to be very fast and have lots of shooting attacks. So you're actively disincentivized from going into terrain features. You want to be far back. And the terrain features in your deployment zone, you want to try to occupy, which will typically mean that you will, of course, by definition, have to be inside the deployment zone. So it's much more difficult to hide from lots of guns while also staying outside your deployment zone, whereas previously you could find situations where you could have units that had escaped. Now, of course, there is a bit of a downside where control of your home doesn't matter quite so much. We are playing priority assets for this particular list, and I know that has a couple of home control matters missions, but I don't know if it's that big of a deal. So it is possible to just leave your utility stuff and leave the deployment zone with them to not continuously take this damage. However, that does open you up to backline reserves. And as you've seen in Adeptus Mechanicus games in the past, or in a lot of these priority asset games in the past, that can really flip the game on its head very, very quickly. We even had Lone Star Open top 4. We had a unit of Einhir Hearthguard make it into the opposed deployment zone and immediately score 30 points over the course of the next 5 rounds. So if you do leave those spots open, it is probably not going to go well for you. And especially because this list actually has tons and tons of Taraxi Skystalkers. So if you do leave those spots open and your screens end up opening a zone where they can come in, there is of course a potential for these armies to go crazy. Now in this case, we're playing some interesting builds. We're playing a so first of all, it's a Tech Priest Manipulus with Peerless Eradicator plus a Cataphront Destroyer unit. It's interesting that these have been moved quite a bit. It might be because of Belisarius Call, but we've seen these classically on Cataphront Breachers, because Breachers gain rerolls when they're near what's the word? When they're near battle line units, excuse me. The Destroyers don't have any rerolls, but you can gain rerolls from Call. I guess it is in some cases the fact that this weapon profile is pretty effective. It's high volume. First of all, the Cataphront Destroyers are much cheaper than Breachers, so that's a big thing. But the Grav Cannons here are high volume. They don't really care about the low AP quite as much, especially because you can gain AP from Conquer Imperative. And we can find ways around cover, right? And then shooting into any vehicle profile, we're gonna have a great job. So we're shooting 24 shots. The Manipulus gives you lethal and sustain because of the enhancement. So your 24 shots, lethal, sustain. I assume we have Belisarius Call. We do. So we do have access to rerolls onto a target, and we can become AP2 thanks to Conquer Imperative. So the potential damage even into non-vehicles is high, and into vehicles is ruinous. Plus, you get better Overwatch, which is really nice, because Overwatch is, of course, very strong right now. We then have a Manipulus with a Skitarii Marshal in a Vanguard unit. Now, I wonder if we have a Scorpius Dune Rider. We do. So I imagine that this is a Dune Rider sort of delivery system. The interesting thing here, I don't know if the Vanguard themselves are really more than a battle line applicator. Like, they have some good guns, don't get me wrong. In this case, they're taking a plasma caliber and an arc rifle and an arquebus. So we have 3 heavy weapons. We have a lot of like anti-infantry shooting that these guys typically have. And I guess like being able to fire anti-infantry 4 and we become a P1. And with the Omnispecs, we ignore cover. So naturally, you're ignoring cover and you're putting people onto like a 4+ or a 5+ save. You're pretty good at like clearing out utility units because you're getting hit rerolls from this Qatari Marshal. But the big thing here is that the unit can, in totality, all jump out of the Scorpius Dune Rider. The Dune Rider gives them wound rerolls, and then the Marshal gives them hit rerolls. And the Manipulus has TL 409 from Lords of the Forge, which is the devastating wound D3+2 damage gun. So getting wound rerolls on that allows you to more reliably inflict 1 to 2 devastating wounds, which is, probably good for between, 4 and 7 damage, right? Onto most targets. That's pretty spooky. You also, I guess, like, you have Hazardous in an attached unit at that point. So, you could pull the Skitarii Vanguard from the failed Hazardous checks as well. You don't have to actually... Like, sometimes you see this on a Tech Priest Agency or something, and he's by himself, and he starts to degrade because of the Hazardous. Don't have to worry about that so much. Although I don't know how big of a deal that is. That's cool. I love, like, the random places that we can find a spot for TL409. I do think that the extra weapon enhancements that we've been getting more recently from these new 11th edition detachments have been pretty well implemented. And I think that they open a lot of interesting builds for specific unit archetypes. This is a very good example, of course. We're taking both Call and Junith. Or not Junith, fucking Tulia Gold. I don't know. For some reason, I don't know. Like a support character that sits in the back. I'm like, that's Junith Aeroida, but it's Tulia Gold. Different character. Apparently I'm too tired for this yet. We have another Skitarii Vanguard unit for additional battle line synergy. Scorpius Dune Rider, as we said. Double Iron Strider Malastari. These ones are taking 1 autocannon, 1 las cannon. That's curious. I guess, like, the las cannon is... Malastari. The las cannon is more consistent against high toughness enemies. And so, in some cases, we have seen these guys fall down into, like, big... T11 plus things. You can imagine that you would probably see a lot of Catan shards or like defilers and stuff that can blank the autocannon profile, or at least survive the autocannon profile, despite how consistent the autocannons are. It's full rerolls as long as Call's on the table. Goes to AP2, so it's 9-2-3. Probably +1 ballistic skill if we get double Doctrine from Tulia Gold. And it, like, the expected damage is quite a bit, but if you're shooting into stuff like Armor of Contempt, or if you're shooting into the sort of defensive buffs or feel no pains and stuff like that, the autocannon can fall down a little bit. Once these guys start to hit and wound on 3s for full rerolls, they get so consistent that you don't have to worry quite as much about it. So I do wonder if that's maybe it's a bit of a team's consideration there, that you can shore up any matchup into those high toughness stuff rather than taking the more like generally consistent and cheaper profile. We've got Servitor Battleclades for utility, ×3 plus the Sicarian Infiltrator Squad. Pretty straightforward stuff. Oh, plus the Taranxi Skystalkers, of course. Skystalkers are interesting here. I wonder if that's a little bit of a concession to priority assets. Let's take a look at their missions. Because, like, priority assets does have a lot of random stuff that's like... Go to your opponent's deployment zone. Extract relic. Requires that you, like, get into weird positions. Sabotage requires that you... Yeah, this one's really easy, actually. It's just... do actions on objectives. So I imagine, like, just the maneuverability of that unit, just being able to, like, rapid ingress in and run in and grab an objective or something like that is huge. Probably the reason we're taking that. I guess there's less Vanguard operation it has the 10 victory points for holding your opponent's home. So having a deep striker that's very fast to allow you to do that definitely, if it makes sense. I guess Vital Link also has that. So, and that's against Purge the Foe and Recon, which I think are the two of the other most popular. Well, I guess Take and Hold and Recon are probably the other two most popular dispositions. The Take and Hold priority asset matchup feels very strong in my opinion, because the additional scoring parameters for Take and Hold in this matchup require that they hold more objectives than the opponent, I believe. Whereas this just requires that you hold any 3. It doesn't require that you actually beat your opponent out on them. So the priority assets player tends to have like a little bit of a leg up. Your Skystalker's lethal hits for command point, call rerolls, and conquer imperatives. Shoots 59 times for 18 AP1 saves on anything, and then fly back 12 to hide. That makes a lot of sense. So that's from Rad Zone, right? Because they have a strat for lethals. It's just funny because most of the time you're playing Manipuli, so you don't even take the lethal anyway. It's over here. Oops. There we go. Interesting. I did. I was like looking through this detachment the other day, and I was like, I wonder, how often you play this, because, like, in this specific build, and this makes total sense, right? This combination makes a ton of sense. In this specific build, the only unit that's good on are maybe the autocannon Iron Striders, but even then, you're twin link, so the lethal hits isn't super relevant. But it's like on these guys explicitly. But because all these units at the top already have lethal hits. It's not quite as effective as it feels like it should be. Like lethal hits for a command point does feel good. That's very interesting. I actually love that. And especially because of how fast you can make it, right? Because you can drop them next to Tulia. You can give them like double doctrine, and then you can advance them if you rapid ingress, right? You rapid ingress, she flips to double doctrine, gives them the buff, and then they run out. And then they blast something, and then they run back. So it's difficult to hide from as well. That's cool. I like it. Interesting tech. I think that's neat. They also had some Emperor's Children. It was mostly normal Emperor's Children, but a little shooting oriented. Sorry, chat, one sec. Edward Hearn running Carnival of Nexus plus Frenzied Host. One thing that was interesting is that this, like, every army kind of like blew out their opponent in this case. Oh yeah, I guess also like high volume into orc matchups does feel very strong as well. Just being able to like just beat out all the big bricks with just massive numbers of like sustained hit shots and lethal hit shots makes sense. But the closest game was the most normal list out of all of them, which I thought was interesting. It is, of course, Necrons who are going to score highly at like a baseline anyway, but I thought that was a funny little observation there. In this case, Edward's playing Lord Exultants ×2 with Infractor Squads, Demonettes ×3, Double Chaos Rhino. So we do cut Demonettes and Infractors compared to most of the builds that we see out of this detachment, where they typically take 3 Lord Exultant and Infractor bricks and then 40 Demonettes. With that, we got an extra Rhino, so we're able to spread the Infractor sort of board presence over across a wider area. We have double Defilers, double Mauler Fiends, then double Noise Marines. So the Mauler Fiends go kind of hard with sustained hits because their individual attacks are very high value, because they're hitting for like D6 1 damage apiece. So being able to gain sustained hits from nearby Demonettes is a big deal on those guys. The Noise Marines also, of course, really love to have sustained hits, and they can get it from being inside the Rhino if the Rhino's next to a Demonette squad. So you're firing like potentially 12 Blastmaster shots plus the Rhino shoots like another 14 times on average by itself, and all of those sustaining can actually make them into these little, like, I don't know, just party buses that blow people up. The interesting thing is the inclusion of those Noise Marines, but I do think it allows you to play a little bit more of a laid-back game plan so that the team doesn't have to baby you into only matchups and only terrain layouts that are conducive to melee gameplay, because you can run into situations where it's difficult to get all the Lord's Exaltants into the fight because they lose their rhinos early, or they just end up being out-threaded, or your opponent's able to like alpha them or whatever. There's a bunch of different reasons that you could have a tough time getting the Lord's Exaltant in, and if the Defilers alone can't shore up that deficit, then you're in a rough spot. So being able to also get value out of additional ranged attackers makes a lot of sense. The Mauler Fiends are cool, though. It also makes the list like good into, I guess, like the Defilers and the Noise Fiends are very good into like media or heavy infantry, right? Like 3-wounders. The Mauler Fiends are a little bit stronger. They're inconsistent into 3-wounders because they have to roll their damage, but they're a little bit stronger into heavy targets, like stuff that get hit by the D6+1 pretty consistently. So being able to soften that stuff up and then go into the Mauler Fiend and clear out those big things makes the list very good into a variety of things. So even in the cases where you're not fighting infantry, you don't need necessarily like miss the Lord Exaltants or your Keepers of Secrets and stuff, because the team can try to put you into the heavier armored stuff and make you like more dedicated at clearing those like big multi-wound infantry bricks. I guess it's why we would probably play them into, or try to play them into, Sky Shroud Spearhead. The tough part with Sky Shroud Spearhead is that, destroyers are tough to kill, especially at range. Although this is a Locust Lord one, so it's not quite as sort of flighty, I guess, as the Chronomancer build, where they move, they shoot and scoot, which is always funny. Cool. A little bit of a very slightly different Emperor's Children build. And then, of course, the last one I want to talk about is Shamble-Rot Vectorium, which kind of came out of nowhere. I'm interested in hearing the like why we're playing this particular list. I guess it's like just a very good place to put additional Defiler profiles, but that was our last list for the team, which is sick. So Alex Nikolic over here is playing Shamble-Rot, which is the Poxwalker detachment. It gives you extra Poxwalkers, 3 units of 10, that go into Strat Reserve on battle rounds 2, 3, and 4. So you basically just have a ton of additional utility units that they can't infiltrate, they can't start on the table, but your opponent has to constantly worry about them like just coming off table edges and grabbing secondaries. So the longer the game goes, if you can like start the fight in battle round 2 or 3, so that your opponent has to pull resources from their backline and suddenly you can start to threaten their home objective and stuff, it's pretty obnoxious. I guess it's also, this is probably another piece of the calculation, is that it's disruption force disposition, which tends to be kind of rare on a lot of the a lot of factions in ways that you actually want to play it. Some of the most classic ones are like there are occasional Emperor's Children builds that you want to play with disruption, because disruption unfortunately does have a kind of a bad matchup into a lot of other dispositions. I guess one funny counter to that would be that it's actually pretty good into Purge the Foe. And this particular list is also good into Purge the Foe because outside of a couple of instances, it does tend to be just low model count, very high resilience units. So it can be really annoying for like Purge to kill, which is very funny. I like that idea. But also, just having disruption in your roster is required because you have to have all of the dispositions. And this is probably not a bad disruption place. Like the other place you see it is like you take Tyranids with Subterranean Assault, right? We saw a lot of teams at WTC take that almost explicitly to be their one disruption person. I think that there's a Drukhari build that runs disruption. What does Kabalite Cartel use? Is that also disruption? It is, yeah. So there are some Drukhari builds that also take it, but it makes sense in this case because it does feel relatively consistent. And so you just you get to write that off on your team. So we're running Typhus inside with a Noxious Blightbringer with Rejuvenating Swarm. I think that's in the Paragons. I think it heals him. Is that right? Paragons of Putrescence. Oh, excuse me. No. They took this out of Flyblown Host, right? This used to be a Flyblown Host thing. Attacks a target at the end of the strength greater than the toughness characteristic of -1 to wound. So you can be -1 to hit in melee from Typhus, and also -1 to be wounded on everyone but. Or I guess it just can't go on Typhus. It works on the whole unit though. It's really annoying. And then the Blightbringer gives him +2 movement. Because he's got his bell. Excuse me, +1 move and reroll charges. Almost +2 movement. So they actually move 5 base, right? So they go to move 6. They move like a normal number. Pretty exciting. What a time to be alive. And then they're just really annoying to kill. And then Typhus can regenerate models back to that unit with his own psychic power. We have a Malignant Playcaster with Sorrow Siphon. That is, while you're leading a Poxwalker unit, +1 to the damage characteristic of Plague Wind. Each time the bearer makes 1 or more attacks using Plague Wind, after the unit has resolved its attacks, D3 bodyguard models are destroyed. I mean, +1 damage to a, I believe it's D3 damage torrent, right? When you overcharge it. It is, it's just D3 all the time. It goes to D6 +3, 6/2, D3 damage. So it goes to D3 +1. So it instantly kills any 2 wounders, and most of the time kills 3 wounders. And at AP2, it puts most like heavy infantry on invuln saves. Could be AP3 even in the cases where it matters against stuff without invulnerable saves. We then have a second Malignant Plaguecaster. These guys are so strong, by the way, that they're just like, most lists I just think just take 2. There's 60 points for this gun profile, and you don't even need anything else. You take a Chaos Rhino so they can get wound rerolls. I actually don't know if the Chaos Rhino can carry Poxwalkers. I think it can, because they lose Infiltrate anyway, as long as the Playcaster's leading them, because he himself doesn't infiltrate. Yeah, the only restriction is that it cannot transport Terminators. So we can put Poxwalkers and double Malignant Plaguecaster inside the Rhino, and then the Rhino gives you fire support for reroll wounds. And you're firing 2d6 +6, D3 or D3 +1 damage gunshots. That's awesome. That's super sick. I mean, that composition where you take the 2 Playcasters and you either shoot them out of the firing deck or you disembark them and then you shoot is very common, and it's it just seems like it's something we would be doing anyway, but Sorrow Siphon makes it so much better in this particular detachment composition. We then have double Defiler, double Myphitic Blightholler. Straight up. Pretty straightforward stuff. So Mortarion with the Defilers is kind of awesome, because Mortarion's already a difficult to kill thing. So you get so much control over the middle of the table with those 3 pieces. Like, your opponent has to deal with the Defilers. If they shoot the Defilers, Mortarion makes them shoot back. I believe that's how that works, right? I think you just have to be targeted, or you lose models to Mortarion's thing. Yeah, it just lets you shoot a -1 ballistic skill in response to incoming attacks. So the Defilers can return fire onto you. Because of Paragon's Imputrescence, it's the greater likelihood that you're inside contagion range, because you extend contagion range off your character units. So across the middle of the table, especially if we have Typhus and his friends up in the center, you can probably be shooting at people at like -1 toughness and -1 save, which is already spooky. Yeah, it is -1 ballistic skill, but it is what it is. I mean, I think you're shooting so many times, and it's like basically a free shot. It's pretty cool. Kuros in the say all models in a unit gain infiltrate when you join an infiltrating unit. That would be news to me, chat. I might not be wrong. I mean, lots of things change in between. No, they don't. If every model unit in the unit has the ability, I guess it would be like, is there a thing where attached units with infiltrator. Let's just look up infiltrator. Is there like an FAQ that gives them infiltrate? Would be in leader, I guess, or attached. No, this is keywords. Forming attached units, abilities and attached units. Abilities affect a unit applied to every model in the attached unit until the source of the ability is destroyed. Abilities that affect a unit, yeah. So I think the key distinction here, chat, is that because infiltrate only checks the like actual abilities on your data sheet, it wouldn't apply. This clause is to reinforce that. For example, if you have one of those like the newfangled leader abilities that's like this unit gains sustained hits, it affects the entire unit, right? So if you had an enhancement, for example, that said this unit gains infiltrate, it would apply infiltrate to every model in the unit. However, infiltrate is not automatically applied to everything in the unit baseline. Yeah. Yeah, it would be a datasheet thing, which I don't believe Poxwalkers have. I think they basically explicitly lose it. Yeah. So adjoining a character to the Poxwalkers does in fact make them kind of slower because they lose that effect. So you don't typically do it unless you have like specific combos in mind, right? So like Typhus plus the Blightbringer plus the Poxwalkers, where they're a good delivery system for Typhus. Typhus can heal the Poxwalkers, and the Blightbringer makes it like easier for all of them to get into melee. The Plaguecaster like eating the Poxwalkers, for example, to power his gun. Those are all like pretty good uses of the unit. However, if you don't have any specific plans for it, you might as well just keep them alone, because then you can like screen with them and put them in the front. Yeah, that is a confusing rule. I don't begrudge anyone for like not necessarily knowing that. That's a weird one because infiltrate does affect the unit once you have it, right? But you have to have it is the issue. So that's the thing. You have to have it on everyone in the unit to begin with, in order for it to actually come into effect. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. Yeah. Anyway, chat, I think this list is cool. So we have like all this beef in the center. We have Poxwalkers to buffer for it, plus this unit. I don't know if this. Sometimes you see this strat reserved, so they can just come off a side and they can usually just like survive around a shooting. If you don't give your opponent a lot of stuff to shoot at, they can just jump in. But I kind of imagine that they're just going to push up mid with Mortarion, because he also gives them reactive moves and stuff, right? So having this big, huge, giant, like fucking annoying unit that's really obnoxious to kill, that also gums up anything trying to come in and fight the Defilers or Mortarion, and also can use his reactive effect if you don't need it on the Defilers themselves, means that the mid-board control for this army is insane. And then you do get good control over the sides, because we have Myphitic Blighthaulers that can push lines of sight around the corners. Obviously, the Defilers can a little bit as well. But also, don't forget, we basically get another 30 Poxwalkers coming off the side, thanks to the detachment ability on top of that. Why is Disruption a good matchup into Purge? Scoring-wise, it looks Purge favored. That's a good discussion to have. Basically, if we go to the the punishment thing. So most Purge missions require only that you destroy enemy units, right? It does, like, Purge is kind of composed assuming that you can just do kills and offset your scoring through attrition. So Purge like tends to, in a lot of cases, be like slightly depowered on like at just like regular hold mission parameters, but they do get this additional bonus for like scoring more for killing people. Punishment lets the Disruption player control which units the Purge player can kill in order to score the majority of their points. So Purge controls at least one objective or more than your opponent. This basically like doesn't, the second parameter here very rarely scores unless you're just getting shit on, especially against disruption, which tends to be kind of like very, this is a generalization, I guess, but it does tend to be higher model count and a little bit faster, like more maneuverable than some other dispositions, just on the types of detachments that typically play it. So this very rarely scores. So otherwise, you're just scoring 4 per turn. On turn 1, the disruption player can put one thing on their home objective and not touch anything else. That means that the only thing that the purge player can possibly kill is a unit on their home objective, which means, like, definitionally, you will not get this 5 points turned the first battle rounds. It won't happen. In future battle rounds, you will only get it if either the disruption player is actively killing you, right? Because you can punish units that destroy your units, but you have to have lost units first, so you're already like down on the training game once that happens. Or units that are on objective so that the disruption player has like basically already scored with, essentially. Now, obviously, being able to like have units that like being able to score that off of units that run into onto your expansion objective and contest it, you lose 4 points, but you kill them and you score 5 points. That is beneficial for you. But in other instances, this list, for example, that's running disruption can give you this unit of 20 dudes who have a 5+ feel no pain and are -1 to be wounded, and have 2 attached characters, which means in order to count as killing the unit, you have to kill all 22 models here. They can touch that onto an objective and touch like a backline objective holder onto a back objective, and then everyone else toes off objectives, and now you have to kill the most resilient unit in their army to score this at all. So in a lot of instances, in a lot of board states, you also won't get this enabled for you for the second battle round also, unless you can basically just like full send and kill their most important unit. Even if you do that, you probably have to overcommit, and then they beat the shit out of you, right? Like you run up in front of Mortarion and attack something else. That's not going to go well typically. So because the disruption player can control which units this score on, they can basically force you to score only a couple of points per round for the first 1 to 2 battle rounds. So your early game scoring is very depressed. Then if they like table you, they'll score 8 at the end, but like they've already killed you if they're taking your home objective, I think, in most cases. But that's why I think, generally speaking, the punishment does tend to be better for the disruption player than otherwise. That's been my experience with it, and I believe that is the common consensus as far as I know. Meanwhile, on the other side, the disruption player just kills whatever, any number of units and anywhere on the table, and they get 2 point victory points per unit. Dodge purge every pairing in ITT this weekend because you don't want to give your opponent 5 points every turn when you uppy downy. Oh yeah. Yeah, so that's another interesting one, because like I think that was initially because we were so marked for death pilled when the edition came out. As soon as we saw this objective, and I did this too, I was like, oh, it's just marked for death as a primary. That's kind of crazy. The purge player chooses a number of units, and if they leave the battlefield, then you get points for them. That's crazy. No. You select units that are on objectives. So if the Red Terror has not killed anyone and doesn't go onto an objective, it is never eligible for the secondary. So like, and it's like especially annoying if you're playing like, Subterranean Assaults or whatever, because the Subterranean player can simply like go do actions and just like fucking leave with their units. They don't really have to actively engage with you. Now, of course, they are incentivized to go to expansion objectives with their utility units, but it requires then that the purge player have staged far enough forward that they're able to attack your expansion. Or you do the thing as you did in this build, where you have this unit that's basically impossible for them to kill reliably that can toe the middle in order to score this primary parameter, right? Or this primary parameter. So you do have to like build for it a little bit, but once you do, it's like really difficult for the purge player, unless the purge army is really fast and has like total like tons of agency, basically, which is good in general, but You know, like this Death Watch army that we're talking about might be able to do it anyway because they can reposition themselves. But in most cases, it's not going to be the case. Um, but at the very least, the ability to prevent this from going off entirely on the first battle round is kind of huge, right? Um, like you just dock them that 5 points. They don't score this first battle round. This only unlocks second battle round. So they're only realistically scoring 9 points a turn for 4 rounds, which is only 36 points. They only have a chance to max if they do the end of game scoring. So if you prevent them from doing end of game scoring, and you prevent them from reliably holding more than you, which is not too hard, and even in future rounds they score this and this, then they won't max primary, and you'll probably be able to beat them. It's picked at the start of the turn. Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah. I didn't think about that. That's actually that's so funny. Because you have to be on the battlefield. That's so true. If the Red Terror does kill anything, I guess like the loss condition is the Red Terror kills something, but isn't able to get out of engagement and can't leave, and then you're fucked. But like, yeah, also, you know, it's relevant for other stuff too. But that is very funny. You're so right. Very good. Good old Red Terror. Like all of the disposition matchups, I'm not going to say that it's like impossible to lose that, of course, as the disruption player. And in terms of a beneficial matchup, this is a nice thing about the disposition system so far, is that we can complain about idiosyncrasies of how easy or difficult a mission is, but in a lot of cases, it's like a 5% one way or another, right? And if you look at the totality of the win rates, I don't know. It would actually be interesting to look through. I wonder if, like, I know somebody did a disposition breakdown, and I don't know if there's data on the specific dispositions yet. I'm sure there is somewhere. Does like stat check have it? Let's look real quick here. Maybe they have it in their like weekly drops. I'm gonna look real quick, actually. They do. They do. Stat check's got our Mac chat. Goated stat check over here. They do have a matrix of win rates. That's fucking sick. Let's go. Can I move this to be a little bit easier to read? No, not really. So like, I guess, yeah. So basically, I guess the worst possible result right now is disruption into Taken Hold. Disruption into Taken Hold is like super bad. 57 to 43%. That's a bit of a problem. Taken Hold's like slightly favored in a lot of cases. I guess disruption into purge is in fact on numbers is a little bit disadvantaged. They are. Oh, I guess no. Disruption into priority assets is fucking horrible. Okay, fair enough. But I guess they are. They're the only thing that they're not as disadvantaged to is recon, I guess, or the mirror. Dude, disruption fucking sucks. God damn it. This is way starker than I expected to see. Mea culpa, I was like, it's 5% in most cases, which is true for 90% of the matchups. It's just these disruption matchups are for so fucking shit. But fair enough. What is the disruption recon again? I played it the other day. It's like really bad. I'm surprised it has the highest win rate, actually. Yeah. So the disruption has smoke and mirrors. which is you decoy an objective. You have to be on a objective marker. You can do it in unlimited times. If you control the objective, it's decoy. You place an operation marker within range of it. You get 2 points at the end of your turn for every decoyed objective. But the decoyed objectives are removed if a recon player just moves and touches them. Whereas the recon player just scores 4 for doing 1 action almost anywhere. Yeah. I'm surprised that this is as positive for disruption as it currently is. That's fascinating. Part of the issue I think is that it's so easy to remove an operation marker. It's like the disruption player or the recon player basically like undoes all the work that the disruption player did effectively by accident, and the disruption player has to do twice as many actions as the recon player. I'm actually shocked that that's as good as it is. I don't know if I've ever seen disruption win that matchup. I'm not gonna lie, that's fucking wild, dude. It's so much fun playing disruption, but scoring wise, just literally could do, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like team events is kind of keeping it going, right? Where it's like it's the only real reason to play them is you play teams. But it makes me sad because I so dearly want to jump back into Subterranean, but Subterranean being locked into Disruption is so fucking atrocious. They have a 40% win rate into priority assets, dude. Come on. They have a 40% win rate into the most popular disposition of the game, brother. What are you gonna do? That's so bad. Oh man. It is like Terraform, yeah. If you complete the decoy, it will score you permanently. The issue is that the operation markers are so easy to remove. And especially for recon too. Like if this was up against take and hold, and the requirement was that like in order to stop you from persistently scoring this without you having to do anything, the take and hold player has to move to your expansion objective or something, right? Like, you know, I could kind of get it. A lot of times take and hold armies are these armies that are meant to be slower and tankier, and they basically just like let you score your expansion, but they control their expansion in mid, and then they win off of the back of that. And so they tend to be like move 6, move 7 armies, but don't have a ton of push. However, recon is composed entirely of armies that are really fucking fast, right? Recon is the like the Eldar jet bike disposition. So you're like, why? How am I supposed to have literally no one ever touch an objective? So I don't know. It's wild. So like the assumption is that the things get removed. If it required recon to take the objective, I think that this should be a lot more reasonable. But the issue is that the objective marker, the operation markers are removed if you touch them at all, right? At any time you end a move within range of an objective marker, you remove the objective marker from the battlefield. That's it. That's the only requirement. So that could be I move to the objective, remove every operation marker on it, then I charge off of it into another objective. Or I move to an objective, I'm like move to one objective, remove an operation marker, charge, pile in, and remove the second operation marker. You can have like random disruption units removing 2 or 3 disruption markers over the course of their turn. Or operation markers. It's crazy. And each one of those requires an action to replace. An action and control the objective. Fucking wild. I don't know, man. But apparently it's close to a 50% win rate. I don't get it, but fair enough. This is interesting. This is an interesting discussion. Thanks for bringing me off on this tangent here. Fascinating. I guess we can stop saying that Disruption does have a positive purge matchup. It just has a less negative purge matchup. Brutal, dude. What is the priority assets mission? Why are they getting so fucked on priority assets? It's disruption versus priority. Locate and deny. I've never played this matchup, so I'm curious about this one. Start of the battle, select 5 terrain areas not within your deployment zone. Place an operation marker within it. If you cannot do so for terrain that is not within your deployment zone. So basically you just like, yeah, you put markers in all the terrain outside your deployment up to 5. The end of your turn, if one or more enemy units start of the turn within range of one or more objectives are destroyed. Sorry, chat. I'm going to take this real quick. I have to run an errand. I'm sorry, chat. Give me a sec. I gotta coordinate picking somebody up later. So this is important. We figure it out. Okay. Sorry, chat. One or more enemy units. One of your operation markers on the battlefield. If one or more of your units are within the same terrain area as that marker, and no enemy units are within that terrain area. Okay. So you have to. So it's a little overcooked, I think, maybe. You score at the end of your turn if one or more enemy units that started the turn within the range of one of one or more objectives are destroyed. So you kill somebody on objective, you get 4. In addition, we have an action that can be done once per turn within the range of a central objective. You perform a sensor sweep, remove 1 operation marker from the battlefield. You will score 1 or 4 victory points if only one of your operation markers is on the battlefield. And you have a guy within the terrain area as that, the same terrain area as that marker, and no enemy units are within that terrain area. The priority assets player also has a sensor sweep mission that removes an operation marker from the battlefield. So the idea is, are these just the same? No, not quite. Perform a sensor sweep. Start turn within a range of 1 or more objectives and destroy the unit. One of your opponent's operation markers on the battlefield, 1 or more units are within range of the same thing. Yeah, okay. So, wait a minute. These are basically the same mission, except that the priority player gets 4 points for performing the sensor sweep. Okay. So the idea, I think, is that like the center objective is like a sensor button, right? It's like a scanner, and you go up to the middle and you scan it, and every time you scan it, you figure out which of the terrain features does not have the relic on it. So you remove that operation marker. You will eventually get to the point that there's only 1 operation marker on the battlefield. At that point, that's the relic operation marker, and you will get points if you run in if you put unit models on that terrain feature. Right? That's the idea. So you and your opponent are both like collectively scanning the battlefield to find where the relic is. Once you know where the relic is, you can go take that objective for 4 victory points per turn. However, one of these teams just scores 4 more points than the other. What the fuck? That's so stupid. What the fuck, dude? Destruction pits the terrain pieces. Yeah, but you always just pick the terrain pieces that are near your terrain deployment zone, right? Like you pick your expansion objective, the central objective, You know, but like, and then like one of the things on your the little line of sight blockers on one side of you, and then like maybe one on your opponent's side, basically. And I think the hope is that you get to the point where the one on your side is the only one that's worth points at the end. But the problem is that what's the cadence look like? You have to remove 4. So if you remove and then you remove the one on your opponent's side, you remove another one. Your opponent removes one. They remove one on your like expansion. You remove one, and you remove the other one on your opponent's side, and then you end up like being the one in the middle, right? It's like how it normally goes. But you do like offer a little bit of control to the player, almost the player who goes second, right? I guess the opportunity to remove the first one is probably relevant. But the player going second gets to choose between two terrain features and make one of them the one that's worth points, right? And then they will the person who removes the last objective immediately completes this, right? Because you sensor sweep the only other one away, and then you take in as long as you have models on that objective, you know that if the sensor sweep completes, which you almost certainly will, then you're going to score this at the end of the round. So like there's also this weird thing where like going second's massive, like actually huge, right? Unless the other player, I guess, refuses to do the secondary, the mission action, and like leave more markers on the table. The disruption person can do all of them in one turn. Oh, is the action not restricted? No, one friendly unit. Yeah, you can't do it more than once, right? And it's not more restrictive. Yeah, it's not more restrictive than the disruption one, right? Just the same action. Once per turn, end of your turn if you control. One central objective. Once per turn, end of your turn if you control. Yeah. That's wild. 1 unit per action? No. Once per turn. What are you talking about, Chad? says you can only do it one time. You can't sensor sweep more than one time per turn. That's very explicit. Disruption can go sense them all at once? No, they can't. What are you talking about? It says once. This is the disruption action, chat. It says once. Unless this is wrong, in which case, mea culpa, I guess. Do I have my deck here? I do. Actually, I just have it right here. These are secondaries. Oh, I don't know where my primaries are, actually. Just kidding. I think it's the secondary mission deck only. Yeah. Yeah, this feels fucking impossible. I don't know. I don't understand the arithmetic by which they got to the priority assets player does exactly the same mission and also has an extra way to score. That's fucking wild, dude. I legitimately don't understand that. Unless like if the disruption player was able to score for holding more than one objective, maybe like they get more points for killing, right? That does not offset 4 free points per turn. That's crazy. But if they could control more than one objective or their end of game scoring was like really high, I would understand it. But because it's not, the scoring baseline is just higher for priority. Just fucking disruption's so trash, dude. I don't. It's like I get it that like designing 20 missions to be perfectly balanced is very tough. It is funny that all of the imbalance went into one. Like there was clearly 5 p.m. on a Friday kind of energy on the disruption deck. They were just like, what is this? What does this disposition do? We have no fucking idea. I don't know. Just do something, I guess. If you stop the priority player from doing an action, you rob points. Yeah, how often does that happen though? Like that requires that your opponent actively fucks up. And I feel like in a lot of cases, if that happens, you might just win the game anyway. Like if they if they like don't take the central objective back, which I mean it's priority assets, it feels like their whole army build should be around taking specific objectives, so it'd be difficult. Or yeah, so other stuff. Maybe all of them are made by the same guy. I don't know. I have no idea. They don't credit their authors anymore, so who knows? Anyway, chat. I think that this Death Guard build is cool. And I like it. And I do think it plays the disruption missions pretty well. Because a lot of them require you go to the middle. And that's what this does really well. Keep in mind that the disruption versus recon that removing an operation marker is different from removing the decoy. You remove the marker, it doesn't undecoy the objective. Is that true? This is the one where... Oh, I went into the recon mirror, sorry. It is the disruption action. You might be right, chat. I'm gonna level with you. I might have played this wrong. I am surprised nobody ever brought that up to me before. Each objective that is decoyed. Friendly unit starts a range of objective that is decoyed. At the end of your turn, if you control the objective is decoyed, place one of your operation markers in the range of that objective. I guess it doesn't explicitly say that operation markers indicate that the objective is or is not decoyed. Huh. I don't think I ever realized that. That does make a lot more sense. DW FAQ'd it? Oh, well, there you go, chat. Then I would feel legitimately dead because I have played on stream playing it that way, assuming that that's how it worked. What is this? Surveil? Maybe the win rate's bad because you misplay it. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Is this the FAQ? For the surveil the foe primary mission, one objective reads one or more enemy units were surveilled this turn unless each of those units is within range of one or more objectives that have one or more operation markers within range of them. For an enemy unit within range of an objective with an operation marker, can I achieve this objective if I remove the operation marker after surveilling the unit as long as it is within the same turn? The answer is yes. That didn't seem to have answered the question. Is this in a Warhammer community thing? I would love a sauce on that FAQ. I would love to not be wrong about rules. That would be my favorite thing in the world. Is it in... Where would that be? Here? The event companion? No, this is teams. Fuck teams. Get out of here. Surveil? Ah! There you go, chat. So this is the event packet, page 4. When a mission's action places an operation marker and applies a status, such as decoyed, does removing the operation marker also remove the status? The answer is yes. Yeah, okay. So we did play it correctly. Woo! Woo! I was like, I mean, it is fair. It does It does not explicitly say that it would be not be decoyed, but it would be weird that the decoyed status would not be tied to the marker that you placed on the thing to track whether or not it has been decoyed. Yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. There, yeah, they're good chat. That's good to know. Maybe. Yeah. Can't help disruption be playable. Maybe the win rate is so good because that people didn't realize that. Maybe the opposite is true. The reason that this is 48% is that people thought that you could continue to score off a decoyed objective even after it had been undecoyed. And it should be lower. How do you fix disruption? Great question, chat. I think like this is a little bit difficult to do, but it does feel to me like all of the dispositions have like have an identity, and disruption I think has the shakiest identity, right? So like take and hold, you go to the middle and you take the objectives. Neat. Purge the foe, you do murder on people, right? Generally speaking. Priority assets, you score more points than your opponent. I actually don't know what priority assets is supposed to do. It's just really good. It's I'm not really sure. Reconnaissance, you go to specific places on the table, right? You go to specific objectives or whatever. Disruption is like, I don't know what the theme is. Disruption is just like it feels like it's maybe supposed to be like the storm hostile objective like thing where you take your opponent's objectives, but that's also just to take and hold. Like those things end up being the same kind of thing. And so it feels like it's all over the place, and that's part of the issue, is that like it doesn't feel like it's quite as well thought through. So I think what they basically need to do, it does feel a little bit like you could probably rebalance the specific missions. It does feel a little bit like they need to go back to the drawing board with this disposition and just be like, what is the fantasy that we were trying to sort of realize with this disposition? Because it's like all over the place. It's just like do random shit and then you score. And I think that's part of the issue. Priority is do actions. No, priority is do one action in your deployment zone and score 4 points. Priorities was fucking stupid. Priorities actions should be more difficult to do. I think that would make it much more easy. For sure. Disruption is supposed to counter the opponent's mission. I mean, I guess so. But like I don't know if that really gets across. And also countering the opponent's mission is just normal gameplay, so it's hard to like make that into a mechanical theme. Because you're like, oh man, how do we sell the theme of stopping your opponent from scoring? And then you look and you're like, well, in order to win, I have to stop my opponent from scoring. So that's just playing the game normally, which is like the kind of thing where it's like, what if it sort of feels like, especially given the flavor text, right? Disrupt the enemy battle plan, deny them the field. Okay, so we have to take their objectives away. But that's just how you score anyway. Like you prevent them from beating you on objectives by taking their objectives. Yeah, okay. So like because scoring is in many cases like a zero-sum game, right? Like if I score, I'm in most of the time denying my opponent from scoring. Or at least at some point over the course of the game, it has to, right? You have to interact with their mission to stop them from doing things. Making the anti-mission is like impossible because that's just already how the game works. So I don't know. I don't know what they would want to do. It's like blue for Magic the Gathering. You try to prevent them from doing anything they want to do. Right. But like, it's not like Magic the Gathering where that's like an effect that costs resources. That's just how the game is played, right? It would be like saying that there is a theme in Magic the Gathering of reducing your, like there's a card theme that's surrounding reducing your opponent's life total to 0. And you're like, well, yeah. that's just winning the game. Outside of like mill or whatever, like non-standard archetypes, poison. Um, you're like, yeah, that's just how magic works. The goal of magic is, in most cases, to reduce your opponent's life total to 0. You can't be like, there's a 6th color in the color pie whose theme surrounds reducing their life total. What? That's just playing magic. What are you talking about? So I don't know. It's like, it's weird. I think it's just maybe it's a design failure. Which I'm actually like surprised that there aren't more of these, because this is the hardest shit in the world to design. Speaking personally, you can design units and army abilities and archetypes and all this stuff all day long, but designing the scoring framework is super tough. It took us so many iterations in Breachstorm to get to a form that looked, and honestly, it's very funny because our missions look very much like these, which is incredible. But to make it look anything like this, right? Where and also have it be like remotely balanced. And I'm surprised that they were able to do it in a pretty reasonable like sort of time frame. Frankacy, thank you for the membership, appreciate it. The style of my deck is to make the game last forever. I mean, I guess so. You could do that. Like disruption being mini purge or mini priority. I mean, I guess, but the issue is that, like, if disruption is just doing the thing that your opponent is doing, but slightly like smaller, then it's just being worse at the other thing. Like, I don't know. It would be interesting if disruption was like was all like this, not necessarily where it's strictly worse than the priority assets version of this mission, but it would be interesting if disruption was just like almost mirror matches, right? Pretty close to mirror matches. And I think that would be like a funny, like an interesting mechanical theme. But I don't know. Or if they did it, they had a bunch of like the weird part about it as well is that like disruption in the recon matchup, and they have a couple of these where it's just like these bizarre these like kind of weird, what's the word, like conceptual like hiccups, I guess, where it's like for some reason the reconnaissance the reconnaissance mission in the disruption matchup is about disrupting the disruption's objectives. Where you're like, okay, why isn't the reconnaissance one to place markers and the disruption player to remove the markers? Like maybe that should be another theme where it's like the onus in the missions where you're playing against disruption, you are required to do something, right? Like it could be a consecrate kind of thing for the purge the foe matchup, and the disruption player can remove the consecration by doing something. Or, you know, the reconnaissance matchup can scout an objective to put an operation marker on it, but the disruption player can remove the operation markers. Like that would make that would be like make a lot of sense. Like if they ended up being operation marker heavy, and the disruption player explicitly had ways to remove operation markers, like that makes more sense. Just going by the theme of disruption, right? Preventing your opponent from doing their thing. It's very strange that the disruption player is the person who puts the operation markers down, and the reconnaissance player removes the operation markers. Conceptually, doesn't make any sense. Unscout an objective. Yeah, it's like I can scout. You can like clear an objective, and then you can have the other player like reoccupy the objective, right, or something like that. Disruption should be increasing command point usage or battle shocking units. I think that's a slippery slope that they don't want to go down, at least yet. We'll see if they do in the future. But I sincerely doubt that they want to have missions that have mechanical, that have like combat implications, right? Like, you know, it's sort of a tradition of 40K. In a lot of cases, not 100%, but like the like combat mechanics of the game and the missions are basically separate, right? You score and you kill people, and sometimes you kill people by scoring, but you never score to kill people better, and you never like I guess you do kill people to score better. That's a bad example, but like your mission never alters how effective you are at killing your opponent. And that's like it has been the case that Games Workshop's done that in the past, but in 10th edition they've been extremely reticent to do that. Even in 9th edition, it was like very rare. Like back in the day when they were making their own in-house objectives, they had all sorts of weird shit in 8th edition, but those were played very widely. Disruption's purpose was to force the opponent to play weird missions that are different. I mean, it could have been that they just tried to make a disposition that is like the Johnny disposition, where it's like it's very complex stuff that like only 5% of the metagame actually knows how to play, and you just beat your opponent based on game knowledge. But I think it's pretty clear that that's obviously like competitively doesn't work very well. Especially because like the other player can just figure it out. I don't know. Like I don't think they necessarily want to incentivize a game plan that's based on you like misleading what your opponent, how the mission works. You know what I mean? Not necessarily that people would like lie to them or whatever, but like they would be incentivized at that point to be playing a worse mission that's very complicated and not necessarily to make that clear to their opponent what they're supposed to do. I don't know. Anyway, it's a tough thing. I think we're gonna get to the point where it's more reasonable. One thing I would love to see Games Workshop play with is forced dispositions change the terrain. They already do this a little bit, but I think it would be interesting if you end up being like, let's say we're playing a really bad matchup. We're playing priority versus disruption, and we go to set up our terrain, and the terrain is more favorable for the priority player or for the disruption player, right? Like they just get extra terrain, or like they get an extra objective or something like that. I think it'd be sick. That'd be super cool. I doubt they'll do that. I doubt they'll go that far, but I think that would go a long way. They have already proven that they are willing to change the layouts based on disruption or based on disposition matchups, because they've like split objectives, they've moved central objectives around based on feedback. I think it would be interesting if they made the terrain asymmetric as well, but I imagine that that's a farther cry. But then you could be like, hey, I'm playing disruption because my missions suck, but I know I can't get alpha struck by Darkflight Pursuit or something because I can like set up in these particular areas, and I think that's very interesting and cool. Terrain is already set. Yeah, but the position can change, right? We could be like, we'll move one piece of terrain from the priority assets player and move it into the disruption deployment zone, so they have extra places to hide. Or we can split the middle, but orient one central objective closer to the disruption deployment zone, so it's easier for them to do their central objective stuff. You know what I mean? I think that would be interesting. And I imagine that they're reticent to change like the physical cards because these are printed materials. Let me tell you, speaking from experience, card printing fucking sucks. You do not want to have to reissue this shit if you already sell it in a printed variety. I imagine that they're very reticent to actually just go through and errata cards like wholesale. I'm sure they will at some point. I guarantee you they're gonna do that. But they're gonna drag their feet as much as they can. And rebalancing in other ways, I think is gonna be the direction to go in. The disruption player gets player place terrain. They just set up all the terrain. Immediately the best disposition. Idea for disruption seems that you have control over the board state, like where you booby trap marker for priority or who you kill. Then your opponent's just like cool and steps up and kills you. Yeah, that might be the case. Yeah, disruption like forces your opponent like where they have to go on the table, but they're like, I was going there anyway because the table's not that big, so they're like, oh, I got you, reconnaissance player. You have to go to the objective. And the recon player's like, okay. All right, I'm going to do that. I was going to do that anyway. Good stuff. The ability to score in the app, full mission rolls and layouts in the app, the cards seem redundant. I don't know about that. Speaking, I much prefer to play with physical cards. Maybe I'm like a weirdo like that, but I think being able to track more concretely exactly when cards were drawn when and being able to lay them out in front of me is like much more helpful than doing it in an app. I've actually, in fact, never used the JW app for any purpose besides building an army and referencing rules. And realistically, I don't even really use it to build armies anymore. Start of the game, deploy your army in your opponent's deployment zone. And then would they also deploy in their deployment zone? It's just both armies are just engaged on turn 1. You play, you're like a Tau player and you just lose. The game's over. That would be pretty good. And then you hit like the one World Eaters player who's like, I'm playing priority assets. And you're like, no, God damn it. And they table you. Incredible. Incredible. They could get away with doing reprints every 6 months. At that point, there's 6 months left in the mission cycle. Yeah, that's true. We'll see. I mean, I think they're just going to do some like occasional erratas or something. Realistically, there's not a lot they have to change, I think, to change the balance of these missions. Because the missions are like, changing one half of the mission will naturally make the other half of the mission harder. They don't need to go crazy, right? Like literally this priority assets versus disruption thing, you just need to like make this 1 point or something. You have to change one number. And suddenly this mission's like very even because both players essentially have the same mission. The disruption player doesn't score for doing the action, but scores more for killing. Okay. Otherwise we're the same. So yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of these can be fixed with very mild erratas without having to do too much. Anyway, chat, I think this has been a whole live stream worth of tangents. I think it's been good though. I've had a fun time. Hope everyone else has as well. But I think I'm gonna hop off here in a moment. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I'm probably gonna. Is the WTC coverage still going, or is War Masters over for the day? I mean, it is like 8 p.m. over there. Oh, it is still going. So I'll probably go hop over into the Discord server, and we will do. We'll do some watch along and stuff. So that'll be fun. So yeah, I'll see you on over there. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today. Keep it classy, folks, and don't forget to come visit me over the weekend at Summer Slaughter, where I'm going to be live streaming all weekend. So yeah. Cheers, everybody.